How's it going, everybody? This is BeatTheBush. Today, I'm going to talk about the $2 trillion worth of stimulus money that's eventually going to dilute your savings account. Now, most people probably have a vague idea that if the United States suddenly just print money and then dole it out to a lot of people, this is going to dilute your savings, in turn reducing the buying power of your dollar. But the question is, how is this done exactly? We're talking about this $2 trillion. How does it get into the hands of people? How does it really dilute anything? What is the actual effect here? So today I'm going to concentrate on following where this money is going and how this actually impacts our economy. The more money that you print, the more money that floats around the system, the more dilution there is, and in turn, this results in higher inflation. The stuff that you buy gets more and more expensive. Whenever inflation happens, generally they try to keep it around 2% every single year. So let's say if your loaf of bread is, let's say, $1 and inflation is at 2% every year, then after 1 year is $1.02. And this gets compounded every single year. So after many, many years, you're gonna see a loaf of bread maybe at $10. Now, right now, it's a pretty terrible situation. All of a sudden, there's $2 trillion of stimulus money suddenly appearing on the market. Let's say you have $10,000 in your high yield savings account earning you 1.5% APY, such as the HSBC online savings account that I personally use. I don't have a referral for that, so just look it up yourself if you're interested in getting this. And likely this interest rate is going to drop to around 0.1%. So if inflation is at 2% and you keep on holding this money in, but your interest savings rate is going to fall to near zero. So no matter what you do, if you hold on to any kind of United States dollar, if you hold on to a bunch of this, it's essentially losing value every single year. Some people in the comments have voiced their concern over hyperinflation. Now, I personally don't think there's a high chance of seeing this ourselves because the Federal Reserve really tries to rein in on this with their monetary policy. For example, if inflation looks like a little bit too high, then they may increase interest rate. Then this is going to incentivize people to keep more of their money in their savings account. And when people do that, they're not spending as much, and therefore the inflation rate will stay down because the prices will eventually trickle down lower. However, this is probably not very good for the economy right this minute. What did happen recently is that the Fed funds rate lowered their interest rate to a target of 0.1%. This encourages spending of businesses and individuals, and in turn, this may eventually lead to a higher inflation rate. Check out this federal funds rates graph. They did indeed reduce it recently to 0.1%. So far, the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, is right around 2%, which is technically, they call it reasonable amount. What is the CPI, by the way? The Consumer Price Index is just a bunch of goods that they think the consumer is going to use, and they just put all these together: transportation, gasoline, they need to buy bread, they need to buy flour, and then they put it all into this basket, and then they look at what the market prices are. After they combine all these metrics together, then you get a final number, the CPI. This graph here is the 12-month percentage change of CPI from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. As you look at this, this is really just measuring a 1-year inflation rate. After 1 year, how much does inflation change? Some people might say the CPI does not reflect real inflation because some people might buy more heavily into flour. They might have a different mixture of what they actually consume. For me, I just use CPI as kind of like a factor where I consider, and it's not an exact science. There's also the argument where people are not always going to buy the same number of things in the exact percentages as the CPI follows. So for example, apples doubles in price. You're naturally going to not buy as many apples, and then maybe you're going to find another fruit that is similar to apple, maybe a pear instead, and then you're going to increase your purchases on pears. So now the mixture of what you actually buy is different than what you initially bought. Because the price index moves around, your preferences is also going to change. So therefore, this CPI is just kind of like a fudge factor. You just kind of look at it from sort of far away. You just kind of squint your eyes a little bit. This is roughly what the consumer is paying. Now, I initially looked into this stimulus money because I wanted to know where these billions of dollars are going and how does this affect our inflation rate. If you look at the $2 trillion stimulus bill and how it's divided, you can see that individuals are going to eventually receive $602 billion, large corporation will receive $500 billion, small businesses $377 billion, state and local governments 339.8 billion, public services 179.5 billion. So all of this totals up to about $2 trillion. Now I don't want to go over every little line item here. I'm just going to look at some of the bigger things. For example, cash payments of $300 billion to individuals. So this is money that the government just printed, and then they're sending the stimulus money. Some people are getting $1,200, some people are getting another $500 per child. This is just money that they just conjured up from nowhere. So this is money that's going to be injected into our money supply, and this will indeed dilute everything. Extra unemployment payments of $260 billion, yet this is again another item that could dilute our money supply. Loans to large corporations of $425 billion. Now, when I looked into this, these are actual loans where they actually do have to pay an interest rate, and they do have to pay this back. So it's a temporary injection into the money supply, but then eventually they're gonna have to pay it back. Along with these loans, they have to agree to not reduce their labor force by more than 10%, and there's all these little criterias that makes it seem a little bit more palatable. But when you move on to the small business loans, new loans at $350 billion, if you look carefully at the criteria for this $350 billion, these loans are actually forgivable, which means that they get the money for free. The criteria here is as long as they retain the employees through the end of June. So this is like they pay their employees 1 or 2 months, and then they get free money basically. So if I had a small business and I happen to get this loan, most likely I'm gonna try my best to meet all the criteria that they ask for so that I can get this money for free. It's just free money after that. And they're also gonna have grants at $10 billion. This is kind of small compared to $350 billion. So I'm talking about these things because I wanted to know how much money is actually going into the system. And all this money just sort of appears like free money. The government printed it, and then they're just handing it out to whoever needs it. And then you also have the COVID-19 response of $274 billion. This is, government spending. They just printed it, and then they're like, oh, let's spend it on, these relief packages. So me going over these are the major things, right? 300 billion, 260 billion, 350 billion. If you add all those things up where people don't have to actually pay back, this is about $1 trillion of money that's just printed out and given out to everybody. So now if you look at the money supply, M2, they basically add up certain kinds of money that's in the system, and then you can produce a chart looking at how much money is in the entire system over time, and you can see at the end over here, right around March 2020, you can see it go up by about $2 trillion. Now, if you look at other countries that has hyperinflation, this is very, very concerning because the more money that you print, the more unstable that it becomes. Now, with all this money printing, you might automatically think, oh, why don't I buy gold? Because gold is a good store of value. Check out this gold price chart over here. In general, you can see that it's going up, but then there are long periods where it actually did not make any gains. From 2012 to 2019, the gold price actually declined, and you might wonder why, because the Federal Reserve actually have a lot of monetary policies that sort of makes gold price out of whack with the actual money supply. It does not correlate exactly with the money supply. It can deviate from it for many, many years. But I personally think that over in the very, very long term, probably if you average it over 10 years, then yes, you can kind of see that as they pump more money into the system, the gold price does sort of float up. With the current injection of $2 trillion and likely a lot more after this is a huge spike in the money supply. So this is why in the recent few months or so, the price of gold has spiked a little bit. And if you ask me, I personally am sort of kind of hovering around it like a shark. I'm like wondering if I should buy into it. Of course, a lot of times whenever an asset already ran up and it's its all-time high, it's a little bit hard to buy into it. But I want to just tell you guys, this is something I personally am looking into. I personally would not invest more than 10% of your portfolio, probably some 5 to 10% or something, just so that you can have it sit there as a hedge against inflation. In the short term though, I do think gold could have a chance to go back down a little bit based on the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve. So buying into gold, I do not think is a slam dunk for me personally because it's already ran up quite a bit. I think over the long term, very, very long term, like I said, if you look at the duration between 2012 and 2019 or so, it actually went down. This is a long period, 7 years of it trending down, even though the money supply has been trending up. This is really, really out of whack. If you guys are interested in trading gold, the best way I think is to buy an equity in gold, an ETF gold fund. Check out my Webull referral link down in the video description below where you can just sign up for this and you can also get 2 free shares of stock as long as you sign up. You get 1 share and then you deposit more than $100 and get another share of gold. And then once you're in this thing, you can actually buy an equity called GLD and then you can invest in gold that way. Of course, I still have to say this is not a recommendation to buy or sell a certain equity because these things can go up or down in value. You certainly should not follow my advice just on the surface over here. You gotta do your own research, check with your financial advisor before you do anything. This is the typical disclaimer I have to give. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to give me a like, comment down below. Let me know if you've already invested in gold or do you prefer physical gold? And as always, don't forget to push that subscribe button and ring that bell icon. Thanks for watching.